Hi, my name is Mo Duffy. I'm from the Fedora project, and I'm here to show you how to create gradient meshes in Inkscape, which can then be imported into Scribus. And by the end of this little tutorial, we'll have produced the artwork for a dye-subliminated tablecloth for the Fedora project. And you can see here, this is the ticket that I'm working on. This is to create a new logo tablecloth for Fedora. And you can see some of the mock-ups that we did. These were created in the GIMP. And we decided to go with this dye sublimated option. There's a dark blue Fedora color on the tabletop, and that fades out to a lighter Fedora blue, and then the Fedora logo in white is centered in the front of the tablecloth. So to start, we got a template file from the vendor. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up. And this is for the 8-foot one. I actually already created on a practice run. I created the 6-foot version of this because we're not sure yet if we're going to do 6-foot or 8-foot. So I'll just make both. And I love how Inkscape, it just opens up PDFs. It's great. But sometimes, if they're created with proprietary software, there's some weirdness to them. So I'm going to clean that up. So first thing first is here in the file, you can see that there is a gray outline, there is a pink outline, and there is a blue outline. The blue outline is what's called the safe space. So any kind of text that you want to be readable, anything that absolutely has to be visible no matter what should be in the safe space. The pink line is kind of often, like if you're working with paper, it's the cut line is where they cut the paper. This might be where they cut fabric. I don't know. But definitely anything that is outside of that pink will, like 99%, it probably won't be visible. But there's also a bleed area, which is the gray line, this one. And that's, you really want to have extra content or extra design that goes all the way out to the edge of the bleed area. Because then, when they're cutting, if it's slightly off center, or if they don't cut it exactly right, some of that bleed area might come into the cut. And you want that to look right. You don't want it to look off. So we do that as sort of like a little insurance policy on the design. You'll also see that there are these dividing lines, and this is to help you visualize where on the tablecloth the design is going to fall. So what we want with ours, if you look back on the mock-up here, is we want that tabletop to be a dark Fedora blue, and then we want the edges to be the light Fedora blue. So a gradient mesh is perfect for this kind of thing because we can basically make a mesh that has this whole center area, the dark Fedora blue, and then we can have it fade out to each one of the things. So first what we're going to do is I'm going to clean up the file. I have played with the other version of the 6-foot version of this file, and I noticed some like weird things with like grouping of objects and stuff. So what I'm going to do is there's 2 things in this file I need, and that's it. I need that outer shape for the bleed, and then I need these guidelines. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the guidelines first. I'm going to group them together. I just call them guides. And that's that. And then I'm going to take the outer bleed shape is sort of like this nested set of groups with like clipping paths and stuff like that. And I am just not into that. I think that's messy. Just to get a clean copy, I'm just going to make a copy of it. And then I am going to make a fresh layer. I'm going to put it on the bottom because I want the guidelines on top. And then I'm going to paste it in there. And I'm going to align it X0, Y0. So now it's perfectly aligned. Okay, so everything else in the layer that came from the PDF import, besides the guidelines, I don't want. So I'm going to take the guidelines. There they are. Now I'm going to delete everything else. Bam. Okay, so that's everything that I wanted. I'm going to lock the guides now, open up the artwork. Now, the first step I'm going to do is I'm going to fill in the shape where I'm going to have the mesh, which is that bleed polygon. I'm going to fill it in with just like a solid color, just so I could see it. Now, as I just mentioned, we want the tabletop to be the dark Fedora blue and then fading out to this light Fedora blue. So first tip here is you want the colors you're going to be using with your mesh to be in a palette so that you can click them and select them very easily. If you don't have, this is what I found, is if you don't have the items in a palette and you're just kind of doing it manually, like I'm very lazy, so I don't always make a palette and I use the eyedropper. It's more manual with gradient mesh. So it's just, your life will be easier if you have a palette. If you need to generate a palette, actually, I found this new tool that is really nice. It makes palettes in the GPL format, which is what Inkscape uses. And it's called Swatch. There's a flat pack for it on flathub.org. And I just entered in all the Fedora, the new color palette codes, entered them in there and imported it, no problem. So just nice little tip there. Okay, so, and if you make a new palette and you load it into Inkscape, you can load it in user share Inkscape palettes on Linux. I don't know about other operating systems. If you have a flat pack, it's going to be in .var app org.inkscape.inkscape config Inkscape palettes. I'm very impressed with myself that I remembered that. But once you have it loaded in, you have to restart Inkscape. And then in this lower right corner, there's like an arrow. And you'll see there's like a whole list in there. There's my Fedora palette that I created and loaded in. Okay, so we have the shape. We have an initial solid fill. We want to do gradient mesh. So the first step is you have to figure out for the gradient mesh, and it's this tool here. It has like a little, it's under the normal gradient tool and it's under the type tool. And it has like this kind of wavy, it almost looks like lightning to me or something. If you click on that, and you look at this toolbar towards the top of the screen, you're going to see rows and columns. So that's like the important thing that you want to fill out before you start using the tool. And this is set from the last time I did the 6-foot file. So it's correct. It's 4 rows and 4 columns. But how do you know? How many rows do you want? How many columns do you want? The way that I see it is for each column, for each row, you're going to get nodes, and those nodes can change the color. So I want this center, well, I'll count from the top and you'll see. So I have the lines drawn here already from the template. So I'm going to count across to get my rows. So I have row 1, row 2, row 3, row 4. And then to get the columns, I'll look at how I have it drawn out. Column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4. So that's what I want. I could do more and I'll just have more nodes to play with and it'll be more work and that's annoying. I could do less, but then it won't come out right. I won't have the right gradients. So this is probably the best thing to pick. So once when you start out with the tool, which kind of makes the tool harder to use, it'll probably say rows 1, columns 1, and you'll click and you'll be like, where's the gradient mesh? Like, where's the grid for it? I don't see it. So when you're starting out with the tool, just make sure you have actual values that aren't 1 up there. Okay, so now I have the values I want. I have the tool selected. I'm going to double click where I want the mesh. I'm going to double click on the object. Now, by default, it takes the solid fill color and it takes either white or transparency. I think it's white. And it just kind of makes a checkerboard. Okay, so this is going to be quick and simple, very easy. I still have the gradient mesh tool selected. You can see that by the little grid in the lower right corner of my arrow, my mouse pointer. Okay, so I'm going to actually what I'm going to do first, I'm going to select this line here. This is row 2. And I'm going to select all the way across the row. I'm going to hold down shift and I'm going to use the arrow keys to align it with the guide from the template. Okay. Because I want those values to be right on. And then I'm going to take the same thing. I'm going to click and drag and then let go to select the 3rd row and do the same. I'm using shift and the arrow keys, the up arrow key to align it. And then over here, I'm going to click and drag down to the 3rd column. Oh, no, it's actually here. Okay. And I'm going to move the right arrow, get it over. I really like using the keyboard. I don't know. You may want to do it by hand, but with the mouse, but I prefer the keyboard. It's more exact. And I hold down shift, and when I hold down shift, it moves it more pixels. So it's a little bit faster to do it that way. And you can, of course, also use the XY. No, actually, you can't use the XY tool on the top, so never mind. Okay, so now I have all those, I have this broken up into the divisions I need. Okay, so then I'm going to click and drag and select all that center area. So there's like, you could see the rectangle of the tabletop here. I have it selected. And then I'm going to select in the palette along the bottom of the screen that dark Fedora blue. All right, now I'm going to hold down shift and I'm going to select the outer edges of the mesh. And I'm going to select light Fedora blue. And I still had the center selected, so I am going to go back, clear my selection, select the center again. There we go. All right. So this is good. We have a gradient mesh. Looks great. It's everything we want. We don't need the guidelines anymore. So I'm going to delete them. And what I found is the best format to use to get this into Scribus is PDF. So I'm going to save this. Actually, this is a previous attempt. Scribus crashed, so I had to re-record this. Okay, I'm going to hit save. I'm calling it 8footmesh.pdf. Sure. All right, now I have a new version of Scribus, and I hope it won't crash. If it does crash, the video will end here. And this has been a nice tutorial on Inkscape meshes. And if it doesn't, then you'll get to see the Scribus side too. Okay, so I'm going to get that 8-foot template file, and I'm going to open it up in Scribus. Okay, and all these import settings look fine. So I'm going to hit OK. It's going to give it to me very zoomed in, but that's fine. I'll try to center this as best I can. Okay, and then I'm going to open up the outline because that's always helpful in Scribus. Sometimes there's stuff in the layers and it's easier to select them from the outline than on Canvas. Okay, and then I'm also going to open up layers. And this is how they set up the file. So when I import the gradient mesh I just made in Inkscape, I want to make sure it's in the design layer. The background layer in this file has sort of it has these, the bleed and the margin lines, and it also has the text. I want that on top just for now, and I'll move it back. This says delete this layer before saving. I don't really understand why this layer is here, so I'm just going to delete it. I don't know if it's like the vendor's quiz that I actually opened up the file and read it. I'm going to move the design layer below so that I have the guidelines to make sure everything's lined up. Okay, so now the design layer is active. I'm ready to import my Inkscape PDF of the mesh. So I'm going to go import vector file. And then it's going to be under documents, tickets, and it's going to be here, tablecloth banner, and it's 8-foot mesh. Okay, and these options looks fine. I'm going to hit OK. And it's going to give me the place icon. And this is my little trick in Scribus that I kind of recently figured out. You want it in sort of the upper left corner, and it'll get close to centered when it imports. And it does take a while. I don't know why. There we go. Okay, now it's not aligned perfectly. So I'm going to go Windows. It's being a little slow. I was hoping it wouldn't because I have a new version of Scribus. Okay, I want properties. See, like the little thing to like move it, like you have 1 pixel to figure out where that is, and then it just disappears. I don't know. That seems like a bug to me. I don't know what it's a bug in, but anyway, okay, I got it. Poof. Okay, so I have the gradient mesh selected. I'm going to set the X to 0. And this is all for alignment. I'm going to wait because that's what you do when you use Scribus. I was really hoping this version wasn't going to do this to me. I'm going to hit again 0, but it's not ready for me. So I'll sit here and wait. Please don't crash, Scribus. Okay, I'm going to 0 and hit enter. Did it finish? No. I can tell it didn't finish because when I click on things and try to drag them, nothing happens. And then it does that. I was really hoping this version of Scribus is going to work better, but that's fine. I don't really know what's going on with it. Okay, so I have that. That's good. I'm happy with it. I'm going to keep the background template lines up just so I can place the logo. Once the logo is placed, we're done. So I'm going to do import, get vector file. And the file is going to be in here. No. Fedora logos. It's going to be a white logo. And at some point, the cursor is going to change to let me place it. There it is. Okay, and I'm gonna do it in like the upper left corner of where I want the logo to show up. I'm gonna wait for it to pop up. So we placed the logo and I forgot we have to do the colors too. And that's the whole reason we're using Scribus is to do the colors correctly so that they'll print correctly. Okay, so I have the logo selected. I went to the properties dialog. I locked the aspect ratio so the logo doesn't get distorted. I remember the value that I used because it's a magic number in the 6-foot version of this 8-foot tablecloth was 42. So I'll do it the same here. I'll make the logo 42 inches wide once Scribus decides that it's time. Okay, 42 inches, hit enter, and wait. Once it gets scaled up correctly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a temporary, oh, why did it do that? Okay, that's all right. I can fix that. I can just change the rotation to 0. I'm going to create a temporary rectangle, and I'm going to use that to center the logo within the front panel of the tablecloth. Okay, I fixed it. Okay, so now I'm going to do, oh, I have to wait because as you do in Scribus, shape, rectangle, and then I'm going to try to use these grid lines to draw it out. And I'm going to wait for it to appear in the outliner. It should appear on the design layer. Good. Okay, so now I'm going to select that. I'm going to select G4492 is the logo art. I usually go in and like rename it just so I know, but whatever. Okay, then I go to Windows, Align and Distribute. I'm going to center it horizontally and then center it vertically and sit and wait for it to do that. Okay, good. So now I think, is that done? Okay, it's done. I'm also going to save this. Do 8-foot Fedora. I'm going to name it SLAGC. I don't know why Scribus took me out of my folder, but that's fine. Okay. Now, one thing I like to do is select the logo. And because that's the front of the tablecloth, I want the logo to be just a little bit higher up than the vertical center. Just because, you know, people are walking up to it and I want it to be visible. And the closer it is to the floor, I don't know, it's just better to have it higher up is my thought. All right, so I have it selected. I'm holding down shift. I'm using the arrow key. I'm just kind of bumping it up a bit. I think the front panel is like roughly 3 feet tall, and the logo itself is 1 foot tall. So I'm kind of changing it. Instead of having a 12-foot margin to the tabletop, it's more like an 8 foot. I'm saying it. Instead of a 1 foot margin, it's more like 8 inches or something like that. Okay, so I'm happy with that. That's good. I can delete my polygon 284 that I used for centering and alignment once Scribus has figured it out. Okay, good. No, won't let me delete it. Don't know why. I'm just going to hit delete and hope it works. Is it doing anything? I don't know. Okay, it worked. Okay, good. All right. So the last thing I have to do, well, first I'm going to move the background layer to the background. So you'll just see the artwork here. Let Scribus do its thing. By the way, I'm using a machine that has like 8 CPUs and at least 32 gigs of RAM. It's less than a year old. And that's how Scribus is performing. I have nothing but Inkscape and this recording running on my machine. But Scribus is like that, even if I'm not recording anything. So, all right. Now, the final step before we save this out is the color stuff. Okay. So some of these colors came from the template PDF, and I don't really care too much about them. Yeah, so this is white. This is from the logo SVG. I'm going to delete it and replace it with CMYK white. And in Scribus, you'll see there's the 3 red, green, blue vertical things, and then you have the grid of CMYK. So if a color has the grid, you know it's a CMYK print safe color. If it has the vertical lines, that's RGB, that's not print safe. It won't come out the way you think it will if you send that to the vendor. So I'm going to delete this RGB black, and it's, you know what, I'm going to do that. If I do remove unused, it'll get rid of colors that aren't being used. Oh, except that one. Replace this white. Okay. Okay, so these two I think are from my gradient mesh PDF. So I am going to convert them to CMYK. This is going to be dark Fedora blue. And I just have to look up the color code for that over here. It's on another screen you can't see, sorry. Okay. So this is going to be 146.0.0. I'm going to hit OK. And then I'm going to do this one. And this is going to be new Fedora blue. And I'm going to set CMYK. And then the color is going to be 88.20.0.0. And I'm going to hit OK. This was a color that came, I think, from the template PDF. I'm just going to get rid of it and replace it with the new Fedora blue because it doesn't really matter. And then that's fine. And then I'm going to get this RGB just because it's there. This 4FOD is also gray, but it's CMYK, so I'm just going to replace it with that. Okay, now when I hit OK, if I didn't hit OK, all the color fixing that I just did would go away. It doesn't get saved out to the file until you hit OK. So I'm going to hit OK. And it's done. I think we're good. Yeah, the only thing is I did leave the stroke on that polygon. I'm actually second guessing that. I think maybe I shouldn't have done that. So I'm going to go in, should be in design layer. I have to give Scribus some time to think. I moved too fast for it. Okay. Every single little thing I open is taking a while. Okay. And I'm going to look at, I'm going to wait. And then when it decides to come around, I'm going to look at stroke and I'm going to make it none. And same here. I don't know why there's two polygons here, but. Oh, that fixed it. Okay, good. Perfect. So this is what I need. This is ready for the vendor. I'm going to save it out. Well, first I'll save my Scribus file. Save as. I like to do .gz because it compresses it. It saves space. Okay, but the vendor doesn't have Scribus, so it's not going to be able to open that. So I have to export it. I'm going to export it to PDF. And the main things you have to worry about here is you have, under the color tab, you do for printer. And then for pre-press, you don't even have to do anything there. I'm going to hit save. And it's done. I have my print ready artwork and it should be right here. So there you go. So we did a gradient mesh in Inkscape. We imported Inkscape's gradient mesh into Scribus, and then we converted the colors to CMYK and got it all prepped for print. Pretty good, right? All right. Hope that was helpful.